And our third question is, what are some of the most prominent projects and trends that are taking place across cryptocurrency and blockchain? So obviously I've got two experts in both the spaces here. So I'd love to just get your thoughts on those trends. You've already sort of found there have been a couple of questions that was done, but love to get your thoughts and opinions on how maybe some of the blockchain infrastructure is impacting individuals and companies using crypto across Africa, and some of the companies that are making the important strides there too. What do you have to say about you?
Right. So we have lots of companies that are really innovating in Africa. I think to mention a few, Yellow Card, Bundle, as a finance. Right. So these are a couple of companies, and I also have a friend using GetBlock. So it allows you to basically do P2P transactions, but through WhatsApp with like an AI agent, and it's really fast. So I think this is where Africa is at right now in terms of, we know that blockchain is way more than payments, but right now I think what Africa is really focused on is payments and some form of real-world asset tokenization. But majorly payments, moving transactions from on-ramp to off-ramp transactions, that's where we are right now. And those are like the key players innovating in Africa currently.
Shantelle, I know you wanted to maybe point out some of the trends too, so feel free to.
Yeah, like I'm an infra person. So I think, like you mentioned some really great teams that are building in that like payment space with stablecoins. And stablecoins has been a huge trend that we've been seeing globally, but specifically, especially in Africa as well. And I think like those companies are doing really serious work, but they're all at the application layer. So if we go like a little bit deeper into the stack and we actually just go back to like the basics of like, what are like the key properties of blockchains? I mean, the first one, is immutability. Once something is on chain or once something is recorded on chain or a transaction has happened in a block, can't be rewritten, right? You have this auditable trail that can't be tampered with. And then we also have composability. Like blockchains, you can layer them on top of each other and you can take out specific bits and like put them into like other applications. And that's something you can't really do in financial, like traditional systems because they're so fragmented. Like if we take, let's say we take identity as something. Identity is something that, especially in Africa, could live on top of blockchain technology. It means that you have access to financial systems, you have access to healthcare, you have access to like credits. That's a very composable example of what blockchains could make happen, make a reality, and reducing just friction. And I think the last thing that we don't necessarily speak so much about, especially in the African context, is permissionlessness. Yeah. You don't need a bank to tell you, like, to authorize your money, or like the transactions that you're making. When it comes to blockchains, you can do that. Not your keys, not your coins, It's something that it's a matter that we always say, but it's true. It's like, you want to participate in this permission system where like your money is yours. And I think that like, if we hone in on those three things, so like immutability, composability, permissionlessness, then we can see more applications being built. I understand why we focus so much on like finance, just because the systems don't exist in a way that is like, good enough for like African people throughout the continent. So yeah, I think that's where I'll leave that.
Right. No, I find it fascinating. I think the key thing for me with a person that is an expert, it seems like there's that increase in visibility for people to either use crypto or even be able to enter more sectors, more businesses, because it becomes cheaper and it becomes easier and feasible. So in terms of trends, what would you maybe suggest in terms of crypto that because of that increased visibility, the reduction in costs, it allows more businesses and companies to enter markets and individuals to enter markets that they necessarily couldn't in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, like you mentioned, permissionless, and I think back in 2021, myself and some friends, we did some projects, and we made some real like cool cash just 2021. I mean, we could never do it on a traditional system.
Right.
Never. right? So, it increases or reduces the barrier to get into the system, right? So you have access to people who are actually, like I spoke about community. Yeah. So there's this rich community in the blockchain ecosystem. Like if you are building something for Bitcoin, you're going to get like people from the US, from the UK, people from different parts of the world who are going to buy into what you're doing because it's a community. Yeah. Right? So it's really rich in culture. It's really rich in community. So if you're going to identify a problem that you want to solve and you create a system around the blockchain, and it's, I won't say the word niche, but the real word is problem, right? And have a community. I think you're gonna fly. Like I've done this time after time after time. Yeah. And in 2023, I created a company and we had about 30,000 users, and it was people all around the world. Not so many from Africa, but from US and UK, and it was really like an NFT platform basically. Yeah. And people really loved it because it was like Bitcoin themed, Bitcoin native, and it had sentimental value. People were like, well, I'm going to buy this for my children. Yeah. Right. So it's really interesting to see how people can come in from Africa, from different parts of the world, Nigeria, and actually create impact through blockchain technology.
Fascinating. Oh, fascinating. And maybe just moving over, let's spin it back to Africa a little bit. So we talked about in the first question about how it's used for transactions, but there's kind of that consensus that when it comes to Africa, it's more about using it for transactions rather than sort of value. I'm sure there's many people in the space that do. But when we're talking about, for instance, meme coins or investing in general, I'd love to get your take about the difference between maybe investing in crypto and transactions and financial structures in general.
I think, okay, so I was in Singapore for a conference called Token 2014, right? And I went to a stablecoin summit there, and the founder of USDT was, he was there, and he mentioned that during COVID, they just grew so fast, they didn't know why. And the reason why was because young people in Nigeria were teaching their parents how to save in dollars, right? And so there is a point of it where it's like, okay, you're hedging against inflation, and like maybe you're investing in, like, you're buying USDT and you're holding it, or maybe you're buying like random meme coins. But I think that the behavior has always been there. It was just mimicking behavior that already existed, but it was just easier during COVID to do that.
Okay. Absolutely. Can I just challenge that? Because one question I had about some of the companies and the pioneers in the industry, a lot of the time, especially when cryptocurrency and blockchains were nascent, it was coming from the West. A lot of founders, and this question, the topic is around cryptocurrency in Africa. So is there kind of be maybe a disconnect between how the blockchain technology, how it was built, and sometimes it's being built for the West or being built for Asia? And I know obviously you guys have done quite a bit of work in terms of Africa, but obviously the dominant of the technology is from the West and Asia. So how can that lead to problems, or does it lead to any problems?
Absolutely. I think in terms of the way that the protocols are built and the infrastructure is built, like I said, it's permissionless. So there are no, like, they build the plumbing and then you can build an application on top of that. Sure. For your market, right? Sure. So that isn't necessarily the problem. The problem that I've seen in the space is capital allocation. Where does the money go? The money doesn't go to African, like, VCs or like the African ecosystem. Liquidity is a huge problem as well for blockchain companies that are building on the continent as well. Yeah. I think a lot of things have been built already, but that doesn't, and we also need to talk about like the ethos of the space, right? The ethos of the space is, it started from the open source community. Okay. So you have this infrastructure that has been built, it's open sourced. Anyone can really take it and tweak it for what they want to use it for. So I think the foundation was laid and that inspired people. Yeah. But could I say there were no African builders? I don't know. I actually haven't looked into it, like who was building back in the beginning. I mean, I've bumped into some people that have told me they've been here from the beginning. Yeah. I'm like, wow. Yeah. It's incredible.
So as to what she's saying, I really think it's a liquidity problem in terms of ideas or I've met really quick builders. They have like the developers, they have the ideas, they have um, different things available to them, but they lack liquidity. Right. So it's a liquidity problem, right? So like you said, like you rightly said, the infrastructure is open. The open source infrastructure is open. Anybody can build on it. It's not limited to Africans or people from the West. Anybody can build on Bitcoin. Anybody can. I've built in Bitcoin, I've built in Ethereum, I've built in Arbitrum, I've built on so many ecosystems, right? I've built in Solana, right? So you can build on anything, no matter where you are in the world, in Africa, Nigeria, Nairobi. You just need access to liquidity. And sometimes if you have the right community, the right connections, I think that's a plus in just being able to like expose yourself to opportunities, where even with limited funds, being able to get in the right rooms. I know people who got funding in Africa and they are in Africa currently. So they come to UK and US sometimes for events and all of that, but they stay in Africa to work in Africa. Some guys that do interoperability, there's an interoperability company, I can't recall the name right now, but they got like $2 million funding and they're based in Vegas, So lots of these guys. So you just have to, I mean, it's not just about having the idea, it's also being able to put yourself in the right places, connect with the right people. And sometimes lots of builders didn't really have the money. So initially, you just have to create the value, find people who need it, give them the value, and the fund will come. It's not as easy as to say something, but it's doable.
And I just want to say one thing of that. My last thing that I was going to say was about access, right? Because of like the weaker African passports, means that they not like African delegates, they can't actually come to these conferences where all the mind share is happening.
Absolutely.
So then it's like the conversation doesn't necessarily carry because there is like a systemic, everything's systemic. It's like because all the passports are so weak, visas aren't granted, that mind share doesn't happen. I was in Bangkok for DevCon, one of these huge conferences, and I was with a Ugandan founder. And he said, he said to me, he said, I built my startup for my community, but coming here, I'm seeing that like people are building for global problems, but I didn't think as big to do that. And I think just like by being in the right rooms and having access to the right conversations, even without the money, you can feel inspired. And maybe that's one of the reasons why you haven't heard these like big names, but we have amazing people building startups
for sure
on the continent.
No, for sure. And it's not just the crypto industry that suffers from this. Across Africa, there's various different industries, and foreign investment is really important towards Africa and also to different continents as well. So it's a trend that we'll continue to see hopefully, that more investors coming in, and as the continent and countries continue to grow across Africa, hopefully there can be more investment there. But just bringing it back to Kamogelo as well, as we just finish up that first question. So love to get your take on some of the more prominent projects and some of the trends that you're seeing take place.
Some of the biggest trends we're seeing across Africa are stablecoin adoption, cross-border payment infrastructure, remittances, and fintech platforms using blockchain to improve financial access, right? So there is growing interest as well in treasury management solutions. That's actually becoming very popular. Merchant payments, connecting African businesses essentially to global liquidity networks. So, it's a far cry from where we used to be a few years ago, where the whole push was financial inclusion. Now it's more, we now want to help bring businesses into Africa for the African market to be able to sort of transact with, do business with, and obviously get better access to their products, easier access to their products. So if you look at countries like Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, these are becoming major innovation hubs within that digital asset ecosystem. So I definitely do think that we're going to see a growing prominence in projects of that nature. We're going to see trends evolving, and that's all going to be based on need and how certain, accessibilities can be made easier. And stablecoin adoption is proving that there's a lot of innovation behind this that's possible. So, yeah.